Hello everyone, I'm Pedestrian again, founder of Elseware Games, and here this is the second tutorial of Pedestrian AI System, which is navigation invokers. So in this session, we are going to cover how to use NPC spawners in your level, as well as how to use pedestrian invokers such as bounding box, waypoint, path, sort of blueprints to move your NPC characters inside the level, and spline crowd invokers such as spline crowd intersection, as well as pedestrian crossing. And also at the later part, I will show you how to integrate traffic lights in your level to move your NPC characters based on the world effect invokers. Okay, and let's dive into the demo. Okay, so this is the project, and so instead of using those stuff at this showcase level, I will create a new level called maybe test map, and inside this folder I can create a new level, maybe basic level, and I will save it inside maps, test map, and name it as test map. Okay, and if I play it now, I can move freely. Okay, and maybe let's add some material to this landscape. So if I go to the materials, maybe not here, if I go to the demo and materials, and yeah, so I will use this MS blue one, and it gives this nice blue texture, and yeah, now it seems good. Okay, also since we are now going to use our NPC characters, I will maybe use one of these characters at blueprints. No, not the blueprints. Characters, blueprints, NPC base folder. So I will first start with this BP NPC base and showcase the default features, and later on let's use the other instances as well. Okay, so if I play it now, you can see our NPC character is there, and yeah, so he's even reacting to the collisions as well, and most importantly he is carrying a static item which is backpack. So maybe I will show you how to change that backpack. So maybe if I select inventory system and maybe change this to briefcase and play it again, you can see how he is carrying a briefcase instead of a backpack, right? Likewise, if I make it none, then he won't carry any sort of static items, right? That's how basically the inventory system works. And let's try to spawn multiple different NPCs based on an NPC spawn, because in our level we don't need to spawn NPCs like this by simply dragging and drop, because it will be very tedious job to do, because your level may be massive, and maybe based on the player position you may need to dynamically render or dynamically spawn NPC instances as well. So simply dragging and drop the NPC instances everywhere in your level will not work at the production. So therefore, you can use this spawner, which is called BP NPC spawner, and basically it will spawn set of NPCs in a specific range. So for example, you can see this yellow box is here. So inside this yellow box range, the NPCs will be spawned. And you have to specify what sort of NPCs that you are going to spawn. So there is an NPC list. Maybe I'll add 3 different NPCs. And for the NPC instances, you can go to the characters, blueprint, NPC, and pedestrian. So here there are 3 types of pedestrians. Or maybe you can go and use these spline cloud specific instances as well. But for now, just for the demonstration purposes, I will use these pedestrian AI instance. This one, and this one. And I can mention the spawn amount. Maybe I'll make it 10. And yeah, that's almost it. And if I play it, now you can see the NPCs has been spawned. But okay, so make sure to set your landscape collision preset to it called custom and world static, because when this spawn happens, it make a trace to find out the landscape, and in order to properly do that trace, you should make the landscape object type as world static. Otherwise the spawn will not be accurate at all. Okay, so if I play it now, you can see the NPCs are spawning in different locations. Also, I just tried debugging first. That's why those debug pointers are visualized. So I will simply disable it and run it again. You can see now, instead of manually placing NPC blueprints, we can simply spawn any number of NPC characters inside our level by using those NPC spawners. Okay, so I'll disable this for an instance. Okay, now it's not spawning any NPCs. And considering this NPC character, let's try to add some NPC invoker logics to this level. Okay, so first I have to add now mesh volume, now mesh bound volume that covers the entire area. Otherwise the NPCs can't find out the correct position to move inside our level. So maybe I'll go to the top view, stick further. Okay, so this will cover the entire level, but still the character can't move because we haven't added any sort of AI logics. But if you can add a NPC invoker, like maybe let's start with navigation volumes, pedestrian invokers, and maybe simple pedestrian waypoint, right? And I'll make the pedestrian AI system NPC state to maybe reach to nearby waypoint. Play it again. Here now you can see the NPC has been moved towards that waypoint. So I'll play it again. Okay, so NPC is simply reaching that specific waypoint. So likewise, I can add another NPC and try it again. So you can see they're both moving towards that specific waypoint, right? And maybe we can add more waypoints to add more dynamic capabilities. And let's run it again. Now here you can see they are moving towards the closest waypoint for them, and after waiting some idle time they are moving towards a different waypoint location, right? Okay, so that's how waypoints works. And maybe let's try bounding box, right? So inside the bounding box, basically we don't need to specifically define what are the locations that NPC should move. Instead of that, simply the NPC character will take some random point inside this boundary and move towards that specific location, right? So I can play it again. So here you can see they are moving within that specific bounding box randomly, right? And maybe I can disable this marker because I have added this just for the debugging purposes. But in your actual game, you don't need to showcase such sort of a marker to visualize the bounding box. Instead of that, you can simply disable this marker visible option here, and that bounding box will be no longer visualized. Okay, I can see they are waiting some random time and move towards specific location. Okay. And here, if you can remember it properly, previously we have used reach to nearby waypoint specific state for the NPC characters, but still if we add a bounding box, they were managed to move towards that bounding box without making an exception, right? Because in pedestrian AI system, basically there is a hierarchy of actions that will be taken by these NPCs. So first it will try to invoke the specific state that we mentioned here, such as reach to nearby waypoint, and currently there is no waypoint inside our level. So instead of waiting for a waypoint, what they are doing is simply they will go to the next best option, which is roam within bounding box. So since we have a bounding box within our level, they will simply use that bounding box and make the movements, right? So in that manner, basically even if you accidentally miss to place some specific state or NPC state for a specific pedestrian, those AI characters will take some intelligent decisions and make some random movements inside your level, right? Okay, so if I make it to roam within bounding box, obviously they are going to move within that specific bounding box. Okay, like this. Okay, so that's bounding box. If I remove it, and maybe let's try pedestrian path, right? So path is basically a spline, so you can simply drag and drop the spline points by simply pressing the Alt button in your keyboard, and I drag that spline and add another spline point. And maybe I'll drag it again and add another spline point. So here you can see by default it follows a closed loop, but I can disable it like this, and yeah, maybe this is now not a closed loop, but if I toggle this closed loop button, it will make a closed loop, right? But just for testing, I will use this closed loop option as false. And once you placed your path in your level, first you have to place the waypoint by clicking this option, and then let's try to run it. Okay, so they are moving towards to a different random location because we haven't set their NPC state properly. So let's okay, so for instance I will remove this NPC and let's use this NPC instance and go to the Pedestrian AI System component, and I'll make it as reach and follow nearby spline path. Let's run it again. Okay, now you can see that guy has been reached to the spline path starting point, and from that position onwards he's following that spline based on the waypoint that has been placed alongside that specific spline, right? And he waits some random time with that specific waypoint location and move towards to the next destination. Okay, so maybe I can customize this further. So first, actually you have to remove these existing waypoints, otherwise you can see when you are dragging your spline or dragging the existing waypoints, it will basically collapse the entire implementation. So therefore I have added this option called delete waypoints. So if I simply click this option, it will remove all the necessary waypoints of that specific spline. And maybe I'll change this spline a bit further to make it as a closed loop like this. Okay, and if I toggle closed loop option now, it will make a closed loop like this. And let's place new waypoint, and let's select our NPC character again and go to the Pedestrian AI System, and instead of waiting 2 or 4 seconds idle time, I'll use like 0, such that our NPC character won't be staying any of these waypoint location. Instead of that, it will start to move towards to the next waypoint instantly. Okay, let's try to play it again. Here you can see that character is moved instantly without waiting. Okay, so that's how we can use spline paths. Okay, so I'll clear these spline path spawned points, and I'll remove the path as well. Yeah, so I think we have covered these 3 basic pedestrian invokers, and now we can see spline crowd invokers in the next step. Okay, so let's see how we can use spline crowd invokers. So I can remove this pedestrian instance as well, because And the spline crowd invokers, we don't need to manually place any of these NPCs. Instead of that, we can simply drag and drop these predefined instances and make our crowds. Okay, so I'll start with the BP spline crowd instance. So you can see this basically is a box which has a spline inside of it. So I can press the box first and go to the spline instance and make my path, something like this. And if you have some sort of a dynamic landscape, not like this sort of a plain one, if you have such a dynamic landscape, make sure to click this align to spline ground, then automatically the spline will be oriented for the ground. Okay, and currently let's see what are the spawns we have. Yeah, so we have total spawns of 20 NPC characters as well as these specific NPC variations, and they have this sort of speed multiplier randomization range. So based on their default walk speed, their speed will be vary once we apply this speed multiplier, right? So we can get more randomized movement for our NPCs pedestrian. Okay, so I'll try to play it again. So you can see now a lot of NPCs are spawned and they are colliding with each other as well, but this is not quite good. I'll reduce the total spawns and maybe I'll make this spline bit further away and later now you can see the NPCs has been spawned and they are moving until the end of that specific spline, and once they have been reached to that specific spline, they have been destroyed and new NPCs will be spawned at the start position of this spline. Right? So if you have sort of a linear environment, you can use this feature, but in most cases the pedestrian should have a predefined closed spline path. Therefore, let's see how we can do that. So you can simply select the spline and go to the spline option and select closed loop, and you can see now the spline has a closed loop, but it's not visualized it yet because it only has 2 spline points. Instead of that, I will create a new spline point. Now you can see there is a closed loop. Okay. So I'll create 2 more spline points to signify that specific closed loop, and if I disable this again, closed loop option, and go to the spline again, you can see now it's not a closed loop, and if I enable it again it has become a closed loop. Okay, now let's try to play it again. So now you can see the pedestrian has been spawned in dynamic locations of this spline, and they are moved along that specific spline, right? Which is much more realistic. And also they are carrying these sort of different static items, because as I explained in the introduction, you can set up these static items as the inventory items in your NPC characters, and based on the enumeration values you can randomize what they are picking. And maybe we can increase total spawns, maybe I'll do 100 and run it again. Now you can see we have a large amount of crowd, And yeah, sometimes these NPCs are colliding with each other. So when such effect or when such instance occurs, they are playing that collision hit reaction effects as well. And also the player can hit with the NPC characters and they are responding back as block reacts. Okay. Okay. So that's how we use BP spline crowd. And I'll reduce the amount back. I'll make this as a linear loop, and maybe I'll remove some of these spline points because I want to showcase the spline path intersections. So suppose we have one spline path like this, and we have another spline path that is perpendicular to it, like this. So we have two different spline paths that are intersecting with each other, and if I simply play it again, you can see the spline crowd is moving only in their paths, but we can make this more randomized. So maybe just for the sake of illustration, I will reduce the number of NPCs that has been spawned. Okay, now you can see they move only towards their spline endpoint. But if you add this spline crowd intersection component where those spline paths are intersected, and simply add those spline paths to this spline path list, like this, it is spline crowd 2, and it signifies what is the percent chance to switch path, which means if you add this intersection, these NPC pedestrians can switch paths randomly, right? So if I play it again, you can see, okay, now this green NPC has been switched path. Okay, this red NPC also has been switched path because we have added the intersection and it randomly check whether an NPC can switch path or not, right? So maybe when you are creating sort of a city environment which has sort of intersection places like this, maybe a pedestrian crossing or maybe some sort of public area, so in such use cases you can use this spline crowd intersection to give more randomness to your level. Okay, and yep, that's the spline crowd intersection. And maybe can look into much more interesting stuff such as this BP pedestrian crossing. So the pedestrian crossing is basically visualize this actual pedestrian crossing of a level, and maybe let's say there are two different splines like this, maybe let's say which are parallel to each other. So I'll make this a bit longer, and I'll have another instance here. Right, so you can see these splines are parallel to each other. Maybe these can be like two pedestrian ways in a road, and let's say there is a pedestrian crossing. So you can simply add this pedestrian crossing instance to your level and make sure they are aligned with those blind paths. So I'll rotate it further, and this is the first instance, and the trigger 2, let's move it further, and the box extent, maybe I can make it much more larger, 7 out of 7, and yeah, make the trigger a little bit away, and then so for the trigger 1, we can select this first spline path, and for the trigger 2, we can select this spline path, and yeah, this trigger is keep moving to the default location, but yeah, once you add that, it would be like this, and now you can see there is a one spline that intersect with this pedestrian crossing trigger box, and there is another spline that will be intersecting with this second trigger box, and inside this pedestrian crossing there's another spline that will move like this, right? Actually that's why the trigger box has been keep resetting to this specific position, because it was trying to keep aligned with this end position of that pedestrian crossing. Okay, so instead of manually moving this trigger 2, I can simply move the end location of this spline, so it will automatically move the trigger box as well, right? Okay, so that was the issue that we faced before, but anyway, now you can see there are 3 different splines that intersect with each other, which makes a pedestrian pathways and a pedestrian crossing, right? Okay, so I'll try to play it again. Now you can see the pedestrians are moving, but they are not actually crossing the road. Maybe because of this trigger scale, so I'll go it further, and percent chance to cross the road, I'll make it 1, and maybe I'll reduce the number of NPC spawns, maybe like for 10, and then let's try to play it again. Okay, they are still not crossing the road. Maybe yeah, maybe it's because of this pedestrian crossing is not invoked properly. So I'll make this can cross option, and now you can see they are crossing the road, right? But actually now everyone is crossing the road, because we have made that can cross is enabled, and the percent chance to cross road is 1, right? Because now the possibility of crossing road for a specific NPC is 1, so obviously once they are reached this specific trigger box, they start to cross the road, but it's not practical at all. So I'll make this as 0.5, so it has a 50% chance for a given pedestrian to make the crossing of these paths. So let's try it again. So you can see now not everyone is crossing the road, but some of may try to cross the road, right? Because there is a 0.5% rate. And since there are many NPCs, actually they are colliding with each other, and yeah, That's it. Okay. But actually, as you have seen before, I had to manually toggle this one true at the pedestrian crossing, because in your actual level, when you are set up these sort of pedestrian crossings, uh, there should be some sort of a automatic way to cross the road. For example, I have added a traffic light as a world invoker, which again use these pedestrian uh, crossing, but you don't need to manually set this can cross variable. Instead of that, that specific world invoker, which is the traffic light, will automatically set this for you, right? But just for the demonstration purposes, I have been added this pedestrian crossing as well. Then you can have multiple different types of world invokers, like maybe a traffic lights, or maybe I don't know, maybe like a railway crossing, something like that. Okay. Okay. So now let's try to remove this pedestrian crossing. Instead of that, let's place BP traffic light spline. So again, this will use the same logic that we followed at the pedestrian AI system, pedestrian crossing, but this will simplify the process a bit further. Right, so I'll rotate it, and maybe, yeah, maybe I'll make this triggers much more larger. So trigger 1, like this, and trigger 2. Actually, you have to extend the spline and then make it adjusted. Okay. And then select PP traffic light instance again, and either you can manually paste that pedestrian crossing instance here, or actually I think I have removed the pedestrian crossing instance. You should have that pedestrian crossing instance within this bound volume. So what can I do? Maybe I'll add pedestrian crossing again. Okay. Right, so you first should have the pedestrian crossing, and on top of that you should have the world invoker, so you don't need to manually trigger that volume, right? And make sure to assign the spline paths, trigger 1, and for the trigger 2, and I'll make these bounds a bit more larger. Okay, and then select the traffic light, and here you can see the pedestrian crossing reference is required. So you can either select it using this pick actor from scene, or you can simply click this populate instant pedestrian crossing, so it will instantly populate this reference for you. And yeah, so this traffic segment state basically defines the default traffic state. So basically, if I make it as stop, the value will be stop, which is red color. If I set it wait, it will go with wait state, and if I set it go, it will start with the go state, which is blue state. And the traffic light time basically signifies what is the wait time for a specific traffic light instance. So for instance, it's 5. Okay, now let's play it again, and we can see now the traffic light is activated. Now pedestrian can cross the road. and now it's deactivated. Now no one can't cross the road, and let's wait 5 seconds. Okay, now it's available again, and now they are crossing, and now they aren't. Okay, so that's how we use the world invokers to invoke the world specific blueprints, right? Because as you can see, I haven't set that can cross variable manual, right? So if you can go to that specific instance, uh, maybe I can disable these things, that's fine. And if I play it again, see, that variable is automatically setting, right? I don't need to manually set it each time, right? Instead of that, this world invoker handle that specific requirement and make the required changes for the blueprint instances that we have been placed in our label. Okay, so that's how world invokers works, and this is the traffic light segments that I have been implemented currently. And maybe if you need much more requirements, maybe like as I said before, like maybe railway crossing or something like that, please request. I can include that feature in a future release of the pedestrian AI system. Okay, so I think we have covered almost all the navigation invokers or navigation volumes that we need to be familiar with. And yeah, so thank you for following this tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one.